evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. This is the last webinar of the series At Home Together. Tonight, we are going to discuss sharing narratives. Feel free to ask questions in the comments if you have some, and we will answer them. This evening, I am with Sharon, Asha, and Sarah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello. Hi. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being with us this evening. So a little bit about myself. I am a psychotherapist, a Gestalt psychotherapist, and I run a private practice here at the Phoenix Psychotherapy Center. And apart from that, I'm also a dance therapist. I work with a variety of clients. I've worked with children, and at the moment I'm working with adolescents, young adults actually who have learning difficulties in a school, in a center. And we move together and we dance and we share our stories and we express our emotions, whatever they may be in that moment. And we make meaning, maybe, and also share our connectedness, our time together, and find joy. And I also work with the elderly, and the elderly have many, many stories to tell. So if you do have some time, do spend some time with a senior citizen and listen to what they have to say. They have so much wisdom. Thank you, and to you, Asha.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I am super excited to be with you lovely ladies here today, talking about therapy, which my friends know I don't shut up about, seriously. So I'm Asha Singh. I am a Gestalt psychotherapist and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy practitioner. I work with home-based therapy services. I also do private work, corporate work, and I teach meditation classes from a neuroscience perspective. I think I've met a lot of different people with a lot of different stories, and I truly love and I'm so passionate about what I do, because the fact that, you know, I can teach or share or guide someone to become empowered, to take control of their narrative, which is today's topic, and watch how it affects their life, their perception of themselves. And at the end of the day, know that my life had an impact on the existence of someone else. You know, it's very meaningful for me. So thank you very much, YMCA, for inviting me to join the discussion today. Sharon, it's up to you.
I'm Sharon Cusens. I'm a life coach, and my background is in psychology, and I'm a change management consultant. I run coaching programs in the Academy for Inner Excellence, where I coach what you did not learn at school to be your own coach. And then I go into co-productions with my participants, and that's where I'm the director of Spring Productions International. And it's a kind of school for entrepreneurs where you discover your higher potential and you learn how to become the master of your own life. So today, yes, thank you, YMCA, for inviting us on sharing narratives, because we believe in the philosophy, and I'm really looking forward to this session with you, Asha and Sarah. Yes, let's have fun. Come on.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, girls. Thank you for being here. I am Gwen. I started at YMCA about 1.5 years ago as a volunteer, and now I'm the Youth Facility Center Officer. Most of my work consists in creating projects, activities, and initiatives targeted towards young people. Later in the webinar, we will have also Anthony Camilleri, YMCA CEO, who will join us to make a few announcements, basically. So, to start with our topic, I think something important would be first to explain the difference between a story and a narrative.
Okay. Yes, I think a narrative is much better than just a story, because in a narrative, you choose which events you want to talk about, specific manifestations, and you reshuffle the order in how you say it. So it's about how you say it. I think it has soul. It's beefed up because it's coming from within. So I can really relate to sharing a narrative in the Academy for Inner Excellence. It comes out of our inner excellence, I think, in the way we say it. And yes, actually, I would like to give you a very short presentation on change, on dealing with change. And then I'd like to weave in how sharing narrative can actually help us with dealing with change. So I'll try and share my screen with you. If you just give me a minute. Yes, can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's in German because I studied change management in Germany. I lived there for 18 years, but don't worry about the language. Just look at the diagram. It's self-explanatory. So let me just give you a few basics, very, very shortly, just a few minutes on change so that you can deal with change better. And as I said, combine this to the narrative. So as you can see, there are 3 stages. This is the first stage where you'd see a straight line. And then you have stage 2 in the middle with a very turbulent line. And then we have stage 3 with another straight line. So basically, there is a stable system, a structure, an organization of how we think, an order. And when change happens, that system, that structure, which is stable, collapses, or let's say rocks, not to be as so dramatic. When that happens, that's change. And change is going to kick you into phase 2, which is very turbulent. And turbulence brings anxiety, fear of the unknown, fear, stress, sadness. You're losing that stable structure. But you're still moving, and you come to the 3rd phase, where then a new structure will be constructed. But as you can see, in the 3rd phase, the stable line is straight, but it's higher than the first line in phase 1. So we can't change the situation. Like COVID happened, things changed. The norm we knew collapsed. We were all thrown out. It felt surreal at times. We moved through that, and now we're building the new stable structure. But at least what we can change is we can make that change positive instead of negative. So the aim is, I mean, no pain, no gain, but at least if there's pain, let there be gain, let there be positive change. So let that line in phase 3 come up and not go down. That's what you can change when you're dealing with change. And I think narrative can help us move out of this first card here. Can you see my mouse? Which is the action-reaction mindset. And we can move, like looking through a different lens, into the card behind this. This is the observer's lens. So as the change is happening, try and distance yourself from what is actually happening and look at it through a different lens of observation. And then go through another lens, look at the same thing through the reflective lens. So you go up to your higher order thinking skills. You move out of the fragmented action-reaction mindset and climb up to your higher self, your higher potential, where you're in a more sovereign state of mind. And I think when we're sharing narrative and reshuffling the way we are saying what we're saying, and we're choosing specific events, we're actually putting on these different lenses and changing our mindsets from action-reaction to observing to reflecting from the meta level. And I think this is a super tool to tell your story, share your narrative, and I believe it will help you move through the turbulence that phase 2 causes with more ease. This is the change curve. This is what happens to us emotionally when that stable structure collapses. We go through denial. No, we don't want COVID. What's this? And then we're shocked. Oh my God, lockdown. And then we're angry and scared. Oh, I'm going to lose my job. We fall down in a hole because we have to let go of something. And we're frustrated and fear. And we start climbing up. We start searching. We start becoming more optimistic, understanding the change, getting some new ideas. And eventually we move to a new beginning. That's where we accept the change. So I think that sharing your narrative can help you build a bridge and stop you from falling so deeply into the valley of despair, into falling into anger and sadness. This is where a lot of people fall in depression in a hole, and then would need to go to therapy. So try and learn skills to manage yourself, manage that change better. I'm not saying it's going to be a leap. You'll still experience the turbulence, but try and build that bridge through storytelling, share your narrative. And another thing in change, what happens to us when we're connecting to wearing these different lenses and talking and sharing, which happens often with your therapist as well, we go through these 4 steps. I like to call this the stairway to heaven. We start off in a mindset where we have an unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. So there's an incompetence inside us that we're not aware of. But then we go up another step as we look into ourselves and we realize that we have an incompetence. And as we're sharing our narrative, this can be part of the narrative. We become aware about that incompetence. And then we learn how to turn that incompetence into competence. Then we become aware of that. And that's where we experience inner growth, enrichment, enlightenment, inspiration, motivation. We get more drive to climb up to the next step. And what happens is when we're telling a story, we are climbing up the stairway to heaven. And what happens is that at the end, we have a new competence and we don't know it. We will discover it through more, in my opinion, more of sharing narrative. So what doesn't grow dies. So let's share our narrative and grow together. I'll stop sharing my screen now. Yes, did I?
Yes.
Make that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Yes. Yes.
I was going to invite you to asking you if you had something to add, or if it's something that you experience maybe within your private practice or so.
Yes, actually, I'm talking from experience because we had to deal with change many years ago, negative change, turbulent times. And I started writing a story to help my children have a soft landing instead of a crash landing as they faced the challenge. And the story led my kids to co-create cartoon characters that help us understand our psyche. And their creations inspired me to write another story. And along the years, we now have 10 stories and a book series.
Wow.
So I'm talking from experience. Sharing narrative is growing, healing. It's empowering, it's beautiful.
And how beautiful that you included your children. It's sort of in co-creating your story together.
Thank you. It was just my mother instinct, you know, and the book. And then we made the film. I started telling the story in film because I couldn't express myself in text. And I started alone and ended up having 35 people co-writing, co-acting. And we have a 90-minute film called Love Will Find the Way. And it's about sharing our narrative and bonding. So it was nothing planned. That's the result. That's the gift. And I'd really like to encourage more people to tune in to sharing their narrative. Yes,
and co-creating narratives together. How beautiful. So important to listen to the children, listen to our children and share our stories with them. Actually, just about a year ago, both my parents passed and I was going through organizing my father's things, and I came across the love letters that my parents wrote to each other while my father was abroad for a few years. And I was just absolutely transported into this world that I knew so little about. I was a child then, I was maybe 1 or 2. And just listening to my mom's story about us growing up and little things that we did and sharing their love for each other. And it would be just so beautiful if you do have time to tell your children about the love story, how you fell in love, even whether you were together or not. There was definitely a moment where, you know, the love was so present.
And I really think this is another area that we should tap into, the intergeneration story, because I believe the wisdom that people have as they mature and grow should be passed down the chain. And I think the chain has been broken somewhere along the way. So I think we should rekindle storytelling, connect to our parents, to our grandparents, to their parents, and bring out these old stories with a lot of wisdom, and connect the chain and start spreading this to younger generations. I'd really like to initiate something like this, and maybe have more people join in.
Absolutely. And, you know, usually per generation, the pendulum, you know, kind of goes to the opposite direction. And I think that when, you know, so usually when our grandparents or our parents start to tell us something, we're like, oh, you know, God, those old-fashioned, that old stories, that old mentality, and we don't want to listen to it. But when we do tune in, we can find, you know, that there's validity in their way of seeing things, and we don't need to agree with it completely or to accept it as the way that we want to lead our lives. But there's a lot that we can learn, at least about the way that they are seeing the world in that point in time.
And we can also contrast. I mean, some of them lived in a war. Look how hard they had it. We're all victims. Like, look at what they went through. You know, we had internet, phones, food. You know, I remember my grandma saying they used to eat banana skins because they were so hungry. So we can appreciate. We can move into the mindset of gratitude. Through passing down these stories.
I think you said a number of really interesting and valid points, Sharon. I just need to see from where I'm going to start, because there were so many things. So first of all, I really liked your Stairway to Heaven, but to be fair, I'm a Led Zeppelin fan, so I'm biased. But it's fascinating because, so, you know, you spoke about change and kind of being on one platform, going to this crisis, and then somehow emerging, transformed like a phoenix into another stage. And the work of Joseph Campbell, who was author, philosopher, psychologist, Madonna. And, you know, he was a big fan of the work of Carl Jung, who really saw and understood just how important narrative is for the human being, because it helps us to organize our experience. It's like, okay, why are we here? Why are all these things happening to us? Why did this happen to me and not to someone else? Having a narrative or even having a story helps us to kind of organize what is meaningful. And in fact, Joseph Campbell, he outlines a pattern in the psyche, which is similar to what you mentioned. And he talks about the hero's journey. And it's, you know, it's a motif that we see in so many legends, fairy tales. So if we take, for example, you know, the Disney film Hercules, it's literally the story of rags to riches, from zero to hero, where a person feels somehow expelled from his society. He doesn't fit in, he's thrown into chaos, and he sets off on a journey alone to discover who he is. And through the process of trials and tribulation, he emerges in his kind of God-incarnated form. He overcomes and transcends his suffering, all the change, all the chaos. And those are all stories of the human spirit. So I think that was a very accurate and beautiful description.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The second thing I wanted to say about, so you mentioned the importance of intergenerational trauma, which is, so I work with social services where we treat families very often over different generations. And it is so incredible to see how real and present transgenerational trauma is. The up and coming field of epigenetics, which is basically how our genes are expressed in the field, is changing everything we know. Because before it was believed that, okay, if you have the genes for cancer, you're going to get cancer. If you have the genes for depression, you're going to get depression. But epigenetics shows us that the stories that are passed down, the environment in how we live, actually changes whether those genes are activated
Expressed,
or not.
yes.
So for one example is, for example, in Malta, we have a problem with obesity. And it kind of makes sense if you look like only a couple of lifetimes ago, my grandma was born straight after the war, where they had no food, they were starving. Like, you better ate whatever you got your hands on. And now it's like we still have this mentality that you need to finish your plate, you can't waste food. And it's so easy to see how the problems that we have now are connected to the stories of long ago. So I'll keep it short because I don't want to take up too much, but I found everything that you said very interesting.
Well, I found
absolutely, and I mean, if these stories aren't passed down consciously, then they're usually passed down unconsciously.
Definitely.
Anyway, you know, we behave by the children noticing the way, you know, the parents love, the way the parents see the world, and so those stories are told anyway through our bodies, through our emotions, through our faces. So sometimes it's really positive if we can find words to tell our children.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering now if maybe because we are mainly focusing a lot on the positive sides and effects that sharing narratives can have, but I'm wondering if narratives that are within our life in general could be distorted or like have actually a bad effect on us. You know what I mean?
I mean, definitely. Can our so if I understood you, you're asking me if narratives can have a negative or maybe destructive influence on our lives. Did I understand you?
Exactly.
So I would say yes. So I specialize in working in trauma. And one of the most common things that you see with trauma is people who have a victim mentality, and they're caught in a loop, basically where they're always the victim. They're always looking for a perpetrator, because without a perpetrator, you can't be a victim. And then they're always looking for a savior or someone to come and rescue them. And this is called Karpman's drama triangle for anyone who's obsessed with theory. And it's a big problem because number one, people kind of wait around expecting themselves to be saved. And you can go to as many doctors as you want, therapists as you want, life coaches, you can take all the meds, but at the end of the day, we all have to carry our own cross, and you are the person who needs to do that work. But you know, if you're in an overwhelming situation, especially when you're vulnerable, like elderly or like a child, you might not have those resources. You know, if you've been abused or physically overpowered or bullied, you kind of, it's like a learned helplessness, and you just continue to react. It's like you're frozen. I can't do anything. Shut it out, stop it. And you're stuck in this perpetual panic emergency state. And we can see this from brain scans. When people come to my meditation classes and I watch how do they breathe, how do they place their body, where does the breath come from, what kind of contact do they have with their body and with the ground, I can actually tell if someone's nervous system is still in sympathetic arousal, which is what we call fight or flight. And so through the process of therapy, people start to kind of integrate that experience, and they learn to tell this new narrative and saying, wow, actually, I overcame this, you know? And if I overcame this, like, what else can I what else can I do? It's kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the film Moana, but she sees this problem in the film and she's looking out, but how far can I go? That's why I love working about trauma, because it's all about people who are just at rock bottom, desperate, and they don't know what else to do. And through therapy and transforming their narrative, they become more than they ever possibly could imagine. And that's beautiful. What do you think, Sarah? Because I know you're also a
Everyone
Gestalt.
knows that we can transform ourselves. We can move out of the victim role, but we have to drive ourselves. We have to learn how to drive ourselves. And only people become aware that they're a victim. A lot of people don't even notice they're in that mindset. So
of course,
I totally relate to.
Yes, I think, you know, I think it doesn't really, but I guess there was the question of whether our, you know, whether our narrative is distorted. I don't, in my practice with my clients, I don't usually think about, it doesn't really matter if it is distorted to start with. So the most important thing is they come there with their story and they probably remember, you know, 10% of it, or they're only seeing it from that perspective. And I think the most important is to deeply, deeply listen to that story. And when you do, when you're really present and you're really present with the emotion, then the story begins to evolve. So, you know, you have someone that comes with horrible, 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 horrible husband. Is anything good about your husband? No. Okay, no problem, no problem. You're there and you listen and you listen. And soon the story begins to expand. Well, actually, you know, he's not a good husband, but he can really do a good curry. Okay. But you know what? He's actually also, he's a really good father. He might not be a good husband, but he's a good father. Okay. And that time when we went to Bari, how much we loved. And the story begins to grow. So then you're not only seeing, you know, that small part of the story, but the whole story. And I think if you don't push that person to change their story and you just listen, and inevitably the story will begin to change. At least, I don't know, that's the way I'm working at the moment. I'm always open to changing my point of view, but yes.
I think it is. I think it is, however, possible, if I may interject, to have a distorted story. Because for me, I'm not saying that there's such a thing as a true story. But for me, there's a difference between a client who comes and has a story based on an illusion or an interpretation, or what we'd call a projection, versus on clear perception of reality. And to give an example, a story based on reality is what is observable, what is really happening. So right now, I am talking to you on a screen, and I can see your head and your face, Sarah. And I can see that you're listening, but that's an interpretation. You're nodding your head, so
it's always an interpretation. Yes.
Yes, but there's a difference between, I can say you're listening, and I have the feedback from the actual reality because you are nodding your head. But I can also say Sarah is pissed off with me because she's flipping me off. The thing is, I can't see that from the screen, so it's not based on reality. So even when people come and they learn meditation, this is exactly why meditation transforms people's lives, because they contact the observable reality. They don't live in a story in their heads. You know how many people come to me and they tell me, oh, but I'm always anxious. Are you anxious or are you excited? What's the difference? Because all emotions structure the stories, and all emotions are nothing more than physiological sensations in the body and your interpretation of them. I don't know if I'm making sense, or
yes,
Sarah.
Yes, you are. Yes, I mean, I remember when I was at university with Father Darmanin, he used to start each lecture by writing, "This is not the truth," on the board. And then he would go on and he would tell us what he thinks, but he would always start it with, "This is not the truth." And I doubt that there is, you know, an objective truth. If I watch it, let's say we both go and we watch the sunset together tonight, what I see and what you see are probably going to be two profoundly different things. So is there, you know, an outside reality whose you know, story of watching the sunset was right, or was it, you know, are we both in an illusion? So I think, yes, I like to go with what is the person's, you know, subjective reality at that moment, and then seeing how that evolves into something new as, you know, as time progresses, as they're listened to, as they listen to themselves talk about their stories. So as you said, they come with anxiety and then they begin to express it, and soon you notice, okay, it's anxiety, but there's some excitement too, and the excitement begins to grow sometimes, or maybe not, who knows, as long as we're not trying to force them into, you know, a pleasant, I don't know. Yeah.
So in that case, sharing narrative is mainly shifting your way, your vision of the world, and of yourself as well. Yeah.
And as you're sharing your narrative, you can recreate, you can start writing a new narrative as you grow up. So you can actually change your story, you have the power to change your story. And those genes that might have been passed down to you, you can leave them dormant and grow into, you know, more empowered mindsets out of the imprisoned programming that you might have received down the generations. And I think it's important to know that we can rewrite our story.
Definitely.
We distorted at the
Definitely.
beginning, but we can rewrite it. We are the writers of our own life at the end of the day.
Definitely. And I mean, I so agree with that. It's so true, Sharon. And something I would also, I think general advice, don't stick to one narrative. The human soul, the human being is limitless. And you don't have to be either this or that. And I think for me, true objectivity is when you integrate all perspectives. It's kind of like, if you look at as a narrative, as to take your metaphor, Sharon, you said narratives are kind of like shining a lens. And that's beautiful because number one, you can choose your glasses, you can choose the lens in which you see yourself, let's say with more rose-colored glasses in a clearer light. But at the same time, when you can hold multiple perspectives about yourself, saying, listen, you know, I suffered, there was a point where I could not stand for myself, I did bad things, but I also can be a good person. It's kind of like, you know, when you go to the cinema and you watch something in 3D, you have the red lens and the blue lens, and by combining those different perspectives, you see in 3D. And that is exactly what combining multiple perspectives do. You have this more holistic and I would say real way of looking at yourself, because you're not just stuck to one story.
One story, absolutely, yes.
Sorry. Yes, you move out of the fragmented thing, and you go through an interdisciplinary experience where you then view it holistically as you tune into your higher order thinking skills. I like the 3D, you know, metaphor you said, Asha.
It's copyrighted, but don't worry, I'll sell you royalties.
Yes,
Sorry, I interrupted you, Sarah.
It's okay. Yes, narratives are always fluid. It's true, because when we hold on to something, you know, and we refuse to let it go, then sometimes that is not useful for us. So I always like to see stories as being something very fluid, like a liquid, maybe like water. Moving and flowing and changing, ever changing, always changing. That's what we can be sure of.
But then I think that's where people get stuck, Sarah, when their story, for example, if I've worked with people with OCD, and it's very, or even, for example, with eating disorders, it's very difficult to change certain narratives because a fixed story provides safety for some people. And sometimes it's better to be with the demons that you know than embrace the unknown and risk something new. So I think that rigid stories do exist. And
yes, I mean, but what is, you know, my story now might not be my story in 5 years' time. So I might look back. So I might look back at even at the same day, you know what I mean? And the story I will tell then will be quite different to the story I would have said 5 years ago.
Definitely. And we see that even in the brain. Like every time you remember a memory, it changes it depending on how you remember it. So
Exactly.
It also depends where you are in your life and which mindset you're in and how you experience and interpret that, or how you observe that.
definitely.
Absolutely, yes.
Changes, we shift.
What do you think, Gwen?
Well, I don't have a background in psychology.
But you have an opinion. You have an opinion.
No, I agree. I think it's very, very interesting. But then I'm a bit curious, like, for example, about things that we really cannot control in life, like, I don't know, disease and a pandemic or something, like, you know, how much can it help? Like, how, you know?
Okay, yes, I think that's where I come in, right? Thank you, Gwen. Yes, I don't know. I've wrote lots of notes, and I think I'm going to wing it. I'm going to wing it instead. So that has been my journey. 10 years ago, I got very ill, and a few years later, I was diagnosed with ME. And this is the way I experience ME. I have a lot of pain and I get a lot of fatigue unexpectedly, sometimes expectedly, sometimes unexpectedly. And it was quite, you know, a difficult story to come to terms with. I fought it a lot. I thought that I will have, you know, I was constantly searching at the beginning, of course, for this miracle cure, miracle therapist, miracle doctor, miracle supplement, miracle me, positive thinking, everything, meditation, yoga, everything, in hope that I would somehow, you know, find a way completely out and go back to, you know, a sense of health that I had before I became ill. And this has been a journey for me of learning to accept what is and balance that with still remaining open and fluid to the fact that things might change tomorrow, you know, so that I don't identify myself so strongly with the illness that then I don't allow myself the possibility of a way out, but not by not accepting that this is the way it is in this moment. So this is, as you may know, ME and fibromyalgia, they are invisible illnesses. So they cannot be seen by other people, and sometimes not even yourself. I look in the mirror and I think, wow, I look great today. Not very often, but yes, I do. And so I guess that adds a little bit to the difficulty of acceptance, and we struggle as a community to be seen and to be heard. And this is where we are as a community, again, trying to build a new narrative for ourselves, to live in a world where we are understood. And we do that through public lectures and talking about our story. And yes, so I work on that quite constantly, accepting myself and accepting, you know, when I have a really bad day or when I'm in a lot of pain, and accepting, even more importantly than that, accepting my reactions towards it. So sometimes I'll have a bad day and I'm completely at peace with it, very kind to myself, and I allow myself to take the day off, you know, as much as I can, of course. And sometimes I have a bad day and I'm very frustrated because I was meant to paint the wall that day. It just happened a few days ago, actually. So I accept also my emotions, my reactions in the moment. I don't know what else that I want to say. And yes, to some extent. And then you have to balance that with always, you know, trying to find a way to fight it, to push yourself, to, I'm quite strict in terms of, I try to maintain a very healthy lifestyle, eat very healthy, and do my meditation and my yoga when I can, of course. So I think, it's in Gestalt, we talk about polarities and not getting stuck in one way of being. So it's a constant fluidity, knowing when you need to give yourself a break and have a rest, and knowing when, okay, no, this is a moment where I think I'll manage to push myself and have another 4 productive hours.
When you accept,
Yes.
you can't lose, basically. When you accept what is, you can't lose.
Absolutely, because that is when you accept.
And it is what it is, you're present. And that's actually where we are alive, wherever we are at that point. But I like that you also mentioned that then you have to find that balance and know when to move and when to dance with life.
Absolutely, yes. And I guess accepting gives us the possibility to stop and check in with ourselves and then see what our choices are. Because when we don't accept, when we fight it, and believe me, I fought it really hard for very long. When we fight it, then when we don't accept, then we don't have a clear view of what our alternatives are in that moment.
Yes, you're kind of pulled down in a fog. I like what you said in the beginning, when you were in the painful part of it. You went into a non-identification with the pain for a while, which I think helps you come into acceptance. Did I understand that? Kind of, that's the pain, and okay, don't kind of identify.
Okay, yes, I can understand what you're saying. I try not to let it consume me and consume my everything. So it's there, but that doesn't mean that I can't maybe sit in the garden and listen to a bird, or put my feet in the water, or have a nice meal if it's prepared for me on that day. Maybe I could. It's possible that I'll manage to cook something wonderful too. It has happened, even when I'm having a bad day. Yes, and I try to find, little moments of joy. I think that's really important, and a really important part of wherever you are, even if you are in a difficult situation in the moment, to find moments of joy. So I don't know, just the flowers or the trees or a bird singing outside or a phone call from a friend, the little things, and allow that to really fill you, really connect with that, and allow that to really fill you.
Use all our senses.
Yes,
smelling, seeing, feeling the beauty around us, present.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your story with us. Because I work as well with autoimmune clients, and I can only begin to imagine how difficult and painful it is to have something that cannot be seen, barely spoken about, because it is something that very often these clients share with me. I also appreciated your story because it's again like what we're saying about the different perspectives. And I would say that one of the ways in which people limit their narrative is by blocking the bodily perspective. Like when people are limited, they kind of stop feeling their body, they go into their head and they start overthinking.
Of course.
And it's amazing because the body cannot lie. Like you can lie with your mouth, but your feet, your hands, they're going to say everything. And it's so most people don't realize that our body is our autobiography in motion. And today, actually, I had a session with a client who's been suffering around 8 years, extremely severe illness. She wakes up sometimes with her limbs swollen, she can't walk, can't see. And it's so amazing because what happens in the body is really a metaphor of what happens to us on a psychological and emotional level. And this client was saying, oh, it feels like my body's falling apart. And her whole life, this client, from when she was born till her early 20s, every form of abuse and trauma that exists, she had it. I mean, incest, sexual abuse, drug abuse, mental illness, domestic violence, and her world around her was constantly falling apart. And it's so interesting because when she's used to describe her anger about this in the past, she'd say like, oh, I'm going to burst into flames. And what was happening in her body? Her tissue was becoming inflamed. I've worked with clients who've had like a frozen shoulder, only to find out they've been giving the cold shoulder to a family member. Clients who are trying to decide which career to go to, and they find it difficult to take a step forward and they end up injuring their feet. And these things are not coincidence. Our reality is created on so many levels.
You know, we can always find the metaphor behind an illness, whether it is an invisible illness or a real, in inverted commas, illness. You know, we can always find a metaphor. I think there are so many ways that we can see things.
Yes, yes. And definitely for whoever is watching this, like if you want to get a new perspective on yourself, just check in with your body. What are the sensations happening? How do you interpret that? What kind of emotions or reactions, especially with other people? Because sometimes we're picking up other people's stuff and you're feeling stuff that actually does not have anything to do with you.
And we see that, you know, we see that in dance, we see that in movement, not even in dance. I mean, a person, you know, I often give this example. Your partner comes in through the door and you ask, what's wrong? The person hasn't even spoken. They don't need to, because you can see it, you know, you can see it in their face, you can see it in the way they're holding their body, you can see that something is wrong.
Of course, and mirror neurons too. I mean, we're wired for empathy. Human beings survive because of a collective, because we work together, not because we have giant teeth and are kings of the jungle, you know?
Yes, thankfully we're wired for empathy.
Was there something else, maybe, Sarah, that helped you?
Yes. Well, I was going to say something about something that gives me a lot of joy in my life. I don't know where she is. Hang on, let me find her. Well, there's a cat over here, if I'm able to see it. Here she is.
Meanwhile, Sharon, please, I will need you to accept Anthony into the meeting as you are the host now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. There we go. Okay.
Hello. So this is Amparo. I have 3 ferrets and I have 4 cats, and if I could, I'd have a dog and I'd have a whole zoo, but we're keeping it down to 3 ferrets and 4 cats for now. And sometimes I think that when God was creating ferrets, he just got joy and he compressed it and then he pulled it out like this and he got a ferret, because they have really taught me the meaning of joy. You just, nothing, you just put a cardboard box on the floor and open the door and they're running in and they are just ecstatic. I mean, sometimes they're so happy, they don't even know where they're going and they just bump into the wall or fall off the bed. They are just, I don't know, they're just joy incarnate. That's what I call them. So
where do you think God pulled them out from, Sarah? Hey, Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
Everyone. Hello.
Hello.
I was watching you live on Facebook.
Did we do good?
Yes.
Great initiative, Anthony.
Yes, well done, well done.
Yes, I'm here basically for the ending bit of this particular webinar. This particular one was part of something we have called At Home Together, and we've been doing them for the past weeks. And with what you've been discussing, and also what we as YMCA have been discussing a little bit with Sharon, we've came up with another great initiative, another great idea that comes after this webinar, I would have to say. The idea is that as you have been talking, sharing our story is something which is beneficial for each and every one of us. And we are asking the public out there, the people who are listening to us, those who are with us right now and those who will listen to us later, to donate something. And this time, because NGOs are always thought about as donating time or donating money, what we are asking them to do is to donate their words. And I think this is a brilliant initiative. We are asking people to share their stories with us. And I changed a little bit the position. You have to see my laptop. My laptop is there's a lot of files underneath it to be able to be in this position, because I wanted to show two important things. I wanted to show the picture I have here, which is something that it has been with YMCA for many, many years. And to me, that represents the different phases of YMCA that it had throughout all the different ages. And up above me, we have a lot of postcards and a lot of cards from different ex-residents, from different service users, from different staff and volunteers that have been with us, and they left us something to say, thank you for what you have done with me, or this is what YMCA reminds me of. And I think that together with Spring Productions International, tonight we have launched a particular group on Facebook. Maybe Sharon, if you want to say something on it.
Yes, it's an honor to be collaborating with you, because every time I come to YMCA and see what you do, I leave with a melted heart, and I always think, my God, these stories have to come out. People have to see the good work you do. So we created a Facebook group. It's called 𝑘𝑠𝑚otion Channel. And YMCA are going to have a program inside this channel called Donate Your Word, where the people from the general public can become storytellers, can share their narrative, can heal and grow themselves, and pass on tips and tricks and inspiration and motivation to others facing challenges. But they can also make us laugh and get creative. So it's a center for positivity. It's a channel, a positive channel. And YMCA are collaborating with their program, Donate Your Word. I'm really excited about this, Anthony. And
I'm really excited as well, because I think this is something that it does not require a lot of things, you know, a lot of energy or money or time. I think these are just a few minutes that each and every one of us can basically share with the people out there and talk about their experiences that might help other people who might come across whatever is being shared on this group. And I think this is one way how we can help people out there.
Looking forward.
Same here, same here.
Beautiful initiative, gorgeous initiative. So people out there, your story is worth being listened to. Whatever it is, we want to listen to it.
And it's about, you know, not being a public speaker or a Hollywood star. It's just a normal person who just wants to share their narrative, and in a humble, simple, uncomplicated way. It's about the content.
Exactly. And they can, what I'm thinking about as well is they can be creative. They can do it in different ways. It can be a painting, it can be a video clip, it can be a TikTok thing. It can be anything basically, or simply a post.
So it doesn't have to be a certain time, you're saying. It could be, you know, a 1 minute thing or a 10-minute thing.
Let's say maximum 10 minutes.
Maximum 10. Okay.
But the space is creative, as Anthony said. It could be a post, a text, a drawing, a song, a poem.
Oh, wow.
Film from your mobile.
Okay.
And then will something happen with these? Like, will they be exhibited somewhere or?
Well, we're going to post them on this group, which is a public group. And the more content we create, I guess we'll create a momentum, a positive momentum, and we'll see how it grows. I have a good buzz.
Absolutely.
I have a feeling about it, and we'll develop it further. But let's start by collecting content.
Yes, I
storytelling.
like the.
Maybe we'll drive them away from the psychotherapists.
I was one of the first 14 members of the group, so I can't agree with you, Anthony. She mentioned it, went in.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
You can get your clients to talk about their success story. They don't need to be ashamed because they went to therapy. They're the brave ones who wanted to move out of there and do something about it. So use it as motivation, you know. Look, you manage. There are people who think they can't. Show them. Tell them your story.
My clients are not ashamed to come to therapy. I think they're quite happy and proud that they invest in themselves and the rest of their lives. So I enjoy working with them.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
I think it's changing in Malta. Finally, people are becoming much more open. We're talking about it. So I think we're good because compared to the situation in some other companies, it's far. In Malta, we're doing better.
Good. Good to hear. Good to hear. Yes.
It's good to hear that the stigma is falling off more and more.
Yes, and nowadays even shrinks have shrinks. So
I have, and I don't live without him with all my clients. But it's true because 1 in every 5 people have severe mental health symptoms in Malta. 1 in every 5, and the percentage for between 18 to 24-year-olds, especially for women, astronomical. It's a pandemic which is bigger than Corona.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sorry, Marta la Maltijas.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for the opportunity. We told Gwen, but it's better to get it to the...
Oh, no. Thank you, and thank you, Sarah, as well, and thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Anthony.
For being with us for the last webinar that we thought that we had planned. Let's put it that way. We are thinking about something else to come. Maybe people can join us through they can check it out on our Facebook page and group. We have some things planned coming up, I think, but we should end up with this great platform, Emotion channel, and they should join us there and they should share their story, because I think it is something which is very important and part of the healing process. I think all the psychotherapists in the room agree that sharing is something that can initiate the process of healing.
Definitely. A story shared is a burden halved.
Thank you very much, people. I think we are ready. I think we can close the session. Sharon, since you are the host, we have to tell you to stop the live sharing on Facebook.
Let me make you a host, because I guess you want to save this film. And Gwen?
It's already saved. It's the minute we stop live sharing, it will be online on our Facebook page.
Okay, so I just leave the meeting now. I made Gwen host.
Okay, so Gwen can bid us goodbye.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. Take care, all of you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.